Welcome to the Endurance Startup Podcast.
Our mission is to share the key principles that structure our approach to endurance training and coaching.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Katie.
Hey, Katie. Ironman Lake Placid, it's over. You know what that means? It means race season's over. That's it. We're done.
The podcast is over. Yeah, we're taking a break until probably next January, February, and then we'll be like early season based. What are you doing for Lake Placid?
Exactly right. So if you're thinking about selling your bike, sell your bike now. That's it. It's over.
Sell your wetsuit, sell all your gear. Everybody get on the couch and do not move for the rest of the year. But in all seriousness, yes, Ironman Lake Placid is over. It was amazing. You were there, Jim, and we hear a lot about that. But there also is a lot more cool stuff going on. I've got athletes that are racing this coming weekend, the weekend after that, kind of all through August into September. And then it's marathon season, trail season, all this cool stuff. So we're going to have a lot of content, which is really exciting. But I think we do have to wrap this one on like, what did we learn from Ironman Lake Placid? You were boots on the ground. Maybe just get us kicked off with some of these insights.
Yeah, let's put a bow on this Ironman Lake Placid thing that we talk about all the time. But yeah, okay. So I was over there. A lot of the observations I have are stuff you've heard. If you've been listening to us, you're going to hear them over and over again because it's just true. And I think for us as coaches, we just learn the same things over and over again. So the first one here is I went over on Friday to Lake Placid and talk about this all the time, but recovery is king during race week, right? And we tell all our athletes, like, by week 3, race them over, like the hay's in the barn, and then we spend week 2, week 1, race week to sort of shedding chronic and acute fatigue. So went over there, and of course, I'm caught every year, just astounded by the number of people out going on their bikes super hard. And I know some of them were people who weren't racing, and I know there's a huge pro field over there this year, and they were easy to spot. So it's like, hey, the pros are about doing stuff, get it, check, understandable. There's some people out here who are just like out there on the road bikes, and you see, okay, they're probably not racing, they're supporting somebody. That's great. But I saw so many people, dozens of people out way far out on the course, way out there, like hammering away on Friday and on Saturday as well, too. So folks, like, the hay is in the barn. All you're doing is making yourself tired. Like, panic training does not work. And I get if you want to go preview, but if you want to go preview the course, like go drive the course or go pick out, maybe a small piece to ride, right? So again, I don't want to pick on anybody. I'm not judging anybody, but there was clearly a lot of people who are nervous. And I get it. Like, when you're nervous and anxious, you do things that maybe you shouldn't do. And the only reason I think people stopped actually biking on Saturday was they had to check their bikes in at 4 o'clock. And as soon as bikes were checked in, people were running all over Lake Placid. They were sprinting all over Lake Placid. I'm like, people, I just want to scream. I just want to have a big megaphone out there at the athlete exit, and go like, please stop, please stop, please stop. Don't go running. It's 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. So anyway, Katie, feedback on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think you can always tell when you're driving into Lake Placid, at least when you drive from like New Hampshire, Vermont, Boston, wherever we're coming from, you drive up the Keene Descent. And I've seen so many people biking up the Keene Descent, which you don't even need to do in the race. But I think people are like, yeah, I'm just going to do a shakeout from town, go to Keene and back. That is like the hardest bike ride I could actually come up with. It's a terrible climb out of Lake Placid. It's a big wicked descent down to Keene. And then you have to climb back up that. It's like 1,000 feet. That is not a shakeout ride. Like, that is something that you do 4 weeks out for your race sim, or you just do the course. But shout out to all our athletes who are like inside, legs up, fan on. That's the way to do it. And this is true for any race that's out there. I think we say this all the time, but you underestimate how much energy travel and, just all your pre-race logistics will take out of you. So anytime that you're not doing those essential logistics, be inside, hay is in the barn, and just like eat carbs and watch people kind of sabotaging their race the day before.
Exactly right. Which I think it leads into my second point. And when I first pulled in Lake Placid, I always go to Tesla chargers over at one of the grocery stores. And I pulled in, there's somebody else there charging up their Tesla with their TT bike. We start talking. And I was like, yo, what's your plan? What are you doing? And it's very clear that this woman doesn't quite have a plan solidified yet. And I'm like, so how many carbs per hour are you doing? Just sort of just trying to, query her. And she's like, I'm not really sure. I've got this and I got that and I got so and so. I'm like, okay, between that and seeing all these people sort of building themselves up, I'm like, please hire a coach. Like, nobody is born knowing how to do an Ironman or an ultra run or any of these things, right? It takes, Katie, it's taken you and I a long time to get our arms around all these endurance principles. And we're really happy to do this podcast and share that information. But yeah, so hire a coach, any coach, right? Get a plan in place so that you're not there blowing yourself up, and you have a nutrition plan, and that you just have a good process. This is all about the process, right? This is a 6 or 7 month really, or multi-year program, and really pretty intense for the first, 6 months, right? From January through July. So hire somebody who kind of knows what they're doing.
I think this is great advice. I mean, obviously, because we want more people to do Ironman Lake Placid with us as coaches, but it is good advice, even if it's not us as coaches, because there is so much energy that goes into training for an Ironman, completing an Ironman, doing all of your life logistics to make that happen. That if you can take away the mental energy of planning out what that looks like, I think you actually free up a lot of space to, know what you need to do in your workout and know what you need to do to fuel. I think if every day you're instead also trying to figure out, like, well, what am I supposed to do? And what are my watts? And what's my FTP? And what are my workouts? I find that that can just really wear people down. So great idea. Hire a coach. Reach out to us at the Endurance Drive if you want us to coach you. I'm sure there will be a big roster of Ironman Lake Plus people for next year because there always are. But it doesn't have to be us in general. Any resource, anyone out there who can help you with just removing some of that decision making and planning can be really, really helpful.
Yeah, and a couple of my athletes, who actually live in Lake Placid and know a bunch of people who done Lake Placid, they said, "Oh, we also have a mentor here as well, too." So I've been coaching them all along, but they reached out to a number of people in the community and said, "Hey, tell us about this Lake Placid thing, this triathlon thing." And so they got a ton of advice, for the last few months from just the local people. So again, if you ask around, at the local pond you're swimming at or something, or maybe the local run group or bike group, there's probably somebody there who's done Lake Placid, right? So it can always doesn't have to always be a coach. It can be just like somebody in your community who knows a little bit about something just to give you some direction.
Yeah, we often say those one-off anecdotes can be the most powerful things for building out a story or just taking the pieces that are resonate with you. So the more people you talk to, the better. And we now have a whole slew of athletes that have done this, so you can reach out to them as well.
Exactly right. My third point is very obvious, but Katie, you and I have seen a lot of bad weather in Lake Placid, especially in June for camps. It turns out that Lake Placid is quite stunning. And so Friday and Saturday before a race was some of the most beautiful days of the summer. And I climbed Whiteface on Friday, which I recommend highly, but you sort of get, sort of a bird's eye view of the area. And you realize like this is just mountains and lakes region all crammed into one. So here in New Hampshire, we've got the lakes region, and then we have the mountains region. But over in Lake Placid, it's all like jammed into one little spot. It's really beautiful over there. So I know it sounds very obvious, and I know people get really attached to Lake Placid because it's so beautiful, but I think, we've been going there for many, many, many years, and I feel like this was the first time I was like, oh, I kind of get why people love this area.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had great days at Lake Placid on race day, but I've also just gone for a weekend sometimes. And it's really nice to just go and enjoy the fact that it's a beautiful place to travel to hike to. So if you went only for the Ironman and maybe you have some PTSD from that experience, go back another time and just go
Yes.
hiking. It'll be beautiful. And there's great ice cream and there's great food and all that. Or just go spectate Ironman Lake Placid next year. And chances are you'll have a really good time. Although I want to ask you about this, Jim, because I know Friday and Saturday were spectacular weather. Race day itself seemed interesting. I was hearing a lot about torrential, insane rain. So, what was the weather mixed bag that you guys got on race day?
Yeah, so it seemed like it was fairly cool, and I think I see one of my points here is that cool weather is one of the biggest performance enhancers, and it was very cool on that day in general, and I think we saw that in a lot of our athletes. We saw that in a lot of I think the course record, bike course record, and the overall record got broken on the men's and women's side, and I think 4 of the 5 women went underneath 9 hours. So anyway, it was a fast course, and yeah, there was a lot of rain. Some people said there was even some hail out there, and I'm not surprised. But in general, I think it rained quite a bit for most people's second lap and into maybe their first few miles of the run as well. And the sun sort of came out around maybe like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But yeah, it was a cool day. And I think that was really reflected. I mean, it seemed to me like a lot of people were running a lot more on the second loop. And again, if I was really smart, I'd pull all the data, I'd scrape all the data from Ironman and the results and see was this year actually faster. But I know the pro field was much faster. And my general impression was that a lot more people that were able to express their fitness this year because it was not, 80 degrees with 70% humidity.
There was not a jaw of 150. It's great. It's really, really good for racing.
Yes.
And actually, on that, yeah, I mean, I think if I had to choose on race day between extreme heat and torrential rain, I would pick torrential rain. Maybe not on the keen descent. It's a little bit of a sketchy place to have, some torrential rain, especially if you have rim brakes on your bike and carbon wheels, etc. But I do think that that heat can just absolutely destroy you. And it's funny because I talked to one of my athletes who had a spectacular race, spectacular run. And she said that the sun only really came out after mile 20 or so. And it was only in that moment that she realized how hard it would have been if it
Mm.
had been sunny the entire time. She was okay for those 6 miles because she wasn't already overheated. She was a great temperature. Probably her core temp was like basically normal. But if she'd been dealing with that for 26 miles, it definitely could have been a very, very different run because you see that climb over time. So just be aware if you've got a hot day, you've got to have a strategy to kind of manage that. And we probably will see see some hot races coming up. There are a lot more East Coast races and some humid days, but be prepared with that ice with all those different tools. And if you luckily don't get a hot day, those things won't hurt you. And any prep that you did to get ready for it will have built your fitness anyway. So it's still very useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, another obvious one here is that, hey, the bike course, it turns out it's pretty hard. We've known this for a long time, right? We have this, obviously it's very much known. But I went out there on Saturday and I rode actually I rode backwards to Wilmington, and I will maintain, and I always will maintain that this course actually rides better, much more backwards than it does forward. And if I were king for the day, that would change the order of how the bike is done. But anyway, so I rode out to Upper J and rode that extra loop that they added in, I think, last year. And again, just reminded that like this is such a hard bike course, and that Upper J climb, I think, is probably the hardest climb. I think people talk about the Bears all the time. They talk about obviously coming back from Wilmington. Yes, it's very hard, but now you hit that Upper J climb at about mile 90, and that just seems it grinds forever. And it's the pavement's kind of bad out there. It's just a very slow, like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. But Katie, what's your worst hill on that course?
Yeah, no, I totally agree that it's a J climb. And I think the Bears get a lot of attention just because of their location. Like, they're so close to the ending. But I talked to one athlete who I agree with. I've done this course just as well. And she's like, the Bears are actually fine. People are cheering you the whole time. You're almost back. You can smell the barn. Everything is great. It's when you're out in J that things are almost out of the saddle climbing that you can really, really, really struggle. And especially on the second loop, like you're not feeling great there at all. It's like what, mile 90 or something, 80s into 90s. It was probably in the 80s in the previous course and now in the 90s.
Yeah.
And that is a really, really hard low point of the bike course. So I think maybe if you can just visualize that and be prepared for that being a difficult section, it might make it a little bit easier. I think instead everyone's like the Bears, the Bears, the Bears, and they maybe prep for that to be difficult, but then they just kind of get hit in the face by how hard J is. So I totally agree.
Yeah. And just in general, like thinking ahead for next year, like I know I'll take away this for next year. And if you're, either being self-coached or coached by us, but, I really think that some of our race sims should be around 7 hours for this course because, looking at most of my athletes, they were in the 7 hour range, plus or minus, right? And so, a lot of times you say, oh, go out ride 100 miles or something, and maybe 5 or 6 hours, maybe the biggest race sim ride. But something to consider for next year or any of your Ironman races, if there's a tough Ironman, is that to go out and do something bigger, and a 7 hour race sim ride would probably be appropriate for next year.
I think this actually bleeds into one of my insights that I was also talking about with an athlete. So I'm going to jump ahead to that one, which is some people actually like the idea of doing some over distance, biking especially, maybe running, maybe swimming, or maybe just training hours before they even embark on an Ironman training journey. Because one of my athletes said, I wanted to know what it actually felt like to see my bike computer roll over from 100 to 101 to 110 to 112. And a lot of people haven't ever ridden longer than a century, especially if you've only done organized rides. There's not really a lot of rides out there that are like, oh yeah, go ride 150 miles. And so maybe, something I might think about folding in for athletes who have aspirations to do an Ironman, like let's say they want to do it in 2 years or something. It's great when you think about this as a multi-year project. We could think about, okay, in the next year, let's see if we can do a bike ride that's 120 miles or something. Or let's plan a mountain adventure like the Pemi Loop. That's 30 miles and it's going to be an all-day adventure. And I think these things are useful, not just from a fitness perspective, but also from a mindset perspective, because you can say, okay, I have done this before, and this Ironman is not as long as that thing that I did, or I at least know how it feels to be on the bike for this long. And so sometimes if you can put those pieces together, I do think that's useful. My one exception to that rule is I don't think that you have to run a road marathon before you do an Ironman, because I think that the run is a completely different sport. Like road marathon and Ironman marathon are two completely different beasts. The road marathon is going to be a lot shorter for you, probably, unless you have some really bad marathon and some insane fitness progression. But most of the time, it's almost like that thresholdy type tempo threshold effort. This is going to be a high zone 2 effort. But if you can say, I have been on my feet in the mountains for 8 hours before, that's going to be a lot longer than your Ironman marathon, as long as everything goes according to plan. So I would just think about folding in those adventures, talk to your coach about what that might look like. But I know that for me, before my first Ironman, Jim, you and I did the California Coast Ride and biked 600 miles over 5 days. We were doing like 120, a 125, a 130. And then when I was told I had to bike 112 miles, I'm like, well, that's hard, but it's not as hard as 600 miles in 5 days. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but if you've seen that bike computer roll over to 125 before, I do think it can help your mindset a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we tend to overthink things. I mean, I know I do. I overanalyze, I overthink things. And I think, right, Katie, I think that California ride was such an eye-opener for me as well, too. It's like we just rode 5 centuries in a row, right? And by the third day, it was like, oh, this is kind of what we're doing. It wasn't a big deal. But if you told me like you got to ride 100 miles today, I'd be like, oh my god, and and I would just get all worked up, and all I probably wouldn't sleep the night before and that kind of stuff. And now it was like, oh yeah, we're riding another 120 miles today. Okay, let's just go, right? And by the fourth and fifth day, it was like this is completely normal. So right, that how do you hit that reset button? And it doesn't have to be fast. Like a principle is that do something slow before you do it fast. And so if it's a Pemi loop, for example, maybe you're gonna be on your feet for 10, 12 hours. That's okay. Maybe you're gonna go for a long bike and it's gonna be a 12-hour bike, right? That's okay. That's fine. Like just go do it slow. But like you said, just being out there and seeing like, oh my God, I can actually move my body for 10 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. And I think bringing that into Ironman, you'll say, okay, this is much more possible.
This is funny actually, because I used the mantra when I was training for Ironman, when I did my first Ironman, that I have moved my body for 3 times this length before. And that was because I had hiked the Dartmouth 50, which is like a 55-mile hike from campus to Moose Lock Ravine Lodge, or maybe it was the opposite direction. But I did that my senior year. And I was like not that great at ultra endurance-y things at the time. I did it with a team. It was like a bunch of kids who had no idea what they were doing. We're wearing hiking boots, we're wearing running sneakers, whatever it is. And I moved at less than 2 miles an hour, like really, really slow, kind of working through the mountains. But I moved my body for 30 and a half hours. So when I was thinking about this, like 10 to 12-hour event, I was like, okay, I've done triple this before. And I kept going and I was hallucinating and it was insane, but I made it through. Like, at least in this case, I get to sleep in a bed, take a shower, sleep in a bed the next night. Like, this is a breeze. Obviously not a breeze, but anything that you can do to just push those limits in terms of time, maybe not intensity, I think will help you a lot. So do a backpacking trip, do some big days in the mountains if you eventually want to do an Ironman.
And it's very clear from our voices that we're super excited about stuff like this. These are sort of adventure type things. So anyway, if you are interested in this stuff and you're like, what should I do or need ideas, like just reach out to either one of us, because we're always like to talk about like, let's do something kind of crazy, right? So we're full of like good ideas or maybe bad ideas. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one.
Good and sad in different ways.
Yeah.
For sure. It's like type 2, 3 adventuring all the
Right.
time. We have a long list that's way better than anything you can get from ChatGPT. So reach out.
Exactly right. My last one in our general observations is that this race is supported by 1,700 volunteers. That is a lot of people. And so anyway, I just want to go back to like, thanking the volunteers and just knowing that volunteers make Ironman racing and any one of these races, ultra runs, anything, the volunteers make these races happen.
Challenge of the week. Sign up to volunteer to race. It can be a local race. Doesn't have to be Ironman Lake Placid, but that can be really, really fun. Even if you're just at like your local 5K handing out waters. It's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, race day observations, general. Again, this is pretty obvious, but Ironman, it's a beast. Congratulations to anybody who finishes this thing because it's so hard. And I often go back to the fact that if the original Ironman had been done over 2 days, if they said, yeah, we're going to swim 2.4 and bike 112 on Saturday, and then we're going to get up on Sunday morning and run a marathon, people would go, oh my God, you're going to do an Ironman weekend? That's so intense. That's so crazy. And yes, that would be crazy doing it over a weekend. But it's over 1 day. So that's even more insane. So I'm always sort of just blown away by like, we're doing all of this in 1 day. Like, this is bonkers.
And it's kind of crazy too, when you're standing there surrounded by thousands of other people that are doing it. It sometimes takes away from the like how insane this actual thing is, but really you are just surrounded by like that 0.1% of like really kind of crazy people. I am one of those people, so I can say that. But like, who are these people and what are they doing? But I just don't want the novelty to wear off for people that this is really, really an amazing thing. If you cross that finish line or even do any part of this Ironman, it's a really, really huge ask. So yeah, just another opportunity to say congrats to folks who are finishing multiple ones of these, and then many of them having incredible days running the entire marathon. It's just super inspirational.
Yep. Best race strategy. I kept saying this to my athletes over and over again, kept messaging it over and over again, the weeks leading up to Ironman, which is patience plus fueling. It's the TLDR, right, of Ironman or any long event, right? Patience plus fueling will get you so far down the road and will keep you moving.
And I think this is true for any races at any distances, really. Like, maybe not, racing a fast 5K, like patience is important, fueling, you can kind of do what you need to do there. But I think if you look at the half distance and you look at run races, if you look at Ironman, in my, I don't know, 7 years of coaching, I would say 95% of the time, maybe higher than that, any races that did not go well, didn't go well as a result of either lack of patience or an issue fueling. Heat is another one that comes in a little bit, but heat interacts with both of those because your fueling changes when it's really hot, and patience can kind of need to be even more exaggerated when it's super hot out. So just know, if you're going to make a mistake, we've talked about anticipating the worst thing that could happen and the mistakes you're going to make. probably it's a patience or fueling thing. And so building into your race plan, what am I going to do to be patient? I had one athlete who told me one of her best mantras was, I am in no rush. Just say that over and over again. Like, I am in no rush. I am in no rush the whole race long, because you're not in an Ironman. If you're ever in a rush, you're probably going too fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as we talk about this, like, what's controllable? What's controllable is patience and fueling. What's uncontrollable? Hey, heat. It's going to be a hot day. Okay, but if it's a heat and humid day, well, then patience is even more important, right? So,
Hmm.
and that's sort of my last point on the general observations is there's just no substitute for big fitness, right? So just like as we talk about moving your body, training, hire a coach, get out there and work at this for, maybe it's a multi-year project, definitely the last, 6 months leading up to Ironman, like just a lot of time on feet, a lot of time on the bike, just showing up with, we call it the big fitness is the greatest card you can play on any one of these long distance days.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm having this thought right now that's like a little bit not super formed, but the idea that fitness is like a necessary condition, but not the sufficient condition. I think fitness is necessary, but not sufficient, because you also need the patience on top of it, and you also need the fueling on top of it. And I would add mindset as a third thing. But if you have all those things dialed on top of the fitness, which is the foundation for everything else that's going to happen, like you will have an amazing day. Unless you have a catastrophic mechanical or something else totally uncontrollable happens, I really think that you're going to have that day. And that's just what I see over and over again. And that's what gives me confidence in my athletes who have trained really hard and followed the plan to a T. Like, there's very little doubt in my mind that they're going to have a great day, because we've talked about the mindset and the fueling and the patience, and that just the fitness is there. That's something that they built and they know they have it. So if you're feeling nervous about your race prep, if you've done the work, like that is the necessary condition, and all this other stuff we can play with. You've got it, you can dial it, but it is very controllable.
I'm glad you brought up catastrophic bike mechanicals because we had a baker's dozen of endurance athletes at Ironman Lake Placid, and guess how many people had catastrophic bike events? None.
Zero.
Zero, zero, right? So it's very rare more and more. And actually, I was funny. I was having lunch the other day with somebody who doesn't really know anything about Ironman or this and that, and they were asking me about the bike and do you get flat tires and this and that? And I said, it's kind of really interesting is that when I first started in different sports and biking, yeah, I felt like flat tires were kind of common. And even just up being like maybe like up into 5 years ago, if we all went out for a ride with 4 people, you were in it for a long ride, probably somebody was going to get a flat. We had to be prepared for it. I feel like right now, like the technology has gotten really good with tubes and tires. And I really feel like now, even just a flat tire, which is not a catastrophic event at all, is very rare. I see it so rarely now that people are getting flat tires because I don't know. I just think technology is really good.
And I think also people are getting better at, I'm calling myself out on being better at this than I was before, is just taking care of your bike. Like, run your hand over your tire, like we talk about it, keep it clean. You're much more likely to notice when something's sort of amiss. And I remember early in my career as a Dartmouth triathlete, and we see this with the current Dartmouth triathletes, sometimes you look at those bikes and you're like, oh my gosh, there is like gunk on the chain caked in that has never ever been touched before in its entire life. And you realize that the chain is a totally different color than you even think that it is, because it's so dirty and you're running at 20 psi. Like, that's sort of more common as a new athlete. But I would say one of the most important skills to develop as you develop in the sport is take really, really good care of your bike, and you are way less likely to have mechanicals, or you'll catch them before they turn into something catastrophic on race day.
Yeah, I think there's two tire pressures for some of the Dartmouth tri kids, and that one is underinflated. I have 10 psi, 20 psi, basically flat, or I pump it up to 150 psi, and it's just harder to rock.
If you had to choose, though, 150 is better than 10.
Right.
10 is better.
Exactly right. But there's two extremes. Okay, last one here, general observations. Don't forget to smile. Yes, I know again, and I'm pretty guilty of this as well. Like, show up, I'm super intense, I'm anxious, this and that. And you just see a lot of serious people walking around like all weekend long into the race day and race morning. And again, it's a reminder for myself that I just need to sort of step back a little bit and say, I get to do this. Today is an event. It's a time to work out with a lot of people, from my tribe. And I get to be grateful to be here and smile.
I'm glad you said this. I feel like I have very little to contribute because I'm so bad at smiling during races. Like, I growl at people who are trying to sport me and smile at me, which is like not something I'm super proud of. But I love the intention. Challenge of the week for me is, in my next races, I'm going to try to smile a little bit more, because I do think it matters, and it can really help you kind of go external, which is something I'll talk about later, have that shared community experience.
Absolutely. Okay, swim. A couple of quick ones here. We talk about all the time. Stay relaxed and easy. That's when we talk about all the time. Number two, don't run to T1. Just walk efficiently. And the third one here is there are wetsuit peelers. There's a whole line of people you have to run through that were willing to peel off your wetsuit for you. And I saw so many people run through. There was actually two lines of peelers. There must have been 20 people doing it. People would run past all the peelers, and then they'd stop in the sand and they'd try to get their wetsuit off by themselves. And there were just some awkward AF moments up there. I was like, well, there's peelers literally 50 feet away from you. You just ran through them all. So I don't know what was going on with a lot of people, but apparently a lot of people want to take their wetsuit off themselves in the sand and struggle. It was kind of entertaining to watch, but please use the peelers.
Yes, they're so helpful. That will save you a good amount of time. And don't try to run all the way to T1 in your wetsuit. Like that is going to make that run or walk or whatever is very uncomfortable and a lot slower than it otherwise would be, but you're going to be free if you use those peelers. I always find it's a funny experience because they're pretty aggressive. They'll be like, get on the ground. Yes. And you're like, okay, like, did I do something wrong? And it feels like maybe you're getting arrested or something. But then before you know it, you're like holding your wetsuit and you don't even know what happens. So these are not at every race. I've only actually ever seen them at Ironman Lake Placid. And then if I think about maybe St. George had them, but like Kona, you don't have wetsuits. So they're very, very rare. Maybe only like the big Ironman brand races. But that means if you get the opportunity to use a wetsuit peeler, take it as like, oh, wow, special bonus perk that is given to me by my $800 Ironman registration.
Right, exactly. It was fun to watch the peelers. Yeah, right. Like, people lay it down, all of a sudden rip it off, and you were like, "Whoa, that was quick." So, uh, okay, I'm gonna go on a little bit of rant here, guys. All right, it's back to tire pressure. Okay, I rant about this all the time, but I just got such a big kick out of it that race morning, like every other person is walking around with the bike pump on. Okay, so here's the deal, guys. You just checked your bike in less than 12 hours ago, right? If you pumped your tires on Saturday, you do not need to pump them again on Sunday. And if you do need to pump them, it means you have a slow leak and you probably know this for a long time and you should have fixed this weeks ago. So really, I want to see very few bike pumps walking around on race day. I just feel like it's the people like a safety blanket. Here's my teddy bear. I have my bike pump. Like, I don't know why there's so many bike pumps here. And I've also put in, there's a Silka tire pressure calculator. Check that out. It puts in, all kinds of variables and it'll spit out and you'll probably figure out that you're probably running too high PSI anyway, right? So what I typically do on these things is I will pump it up and maybe I go 1 or 2 PSI higher than on Saturday if I have to go on a Sunday, because then maybe it'll lose 1 or 2 or maybe not. And you think about it most of the time, probably at home, you pump up your tires maybe like once a week anyway. So anyway, leave the bike pump at home.
Totally. Yes. And I will say I'm big about having a very neat and clean transition area. Like I don't want any bonus stuff in there. And it actually drives me crazy when there's like other people that put their bike pump somewhere in transition and it's in your way and they're spilling over into your space. So try in general. This goes for really any try. And it's a little bit different with Ironman where like you have the bags. But if it's just setting up your try station by your bike, try to only have things in there that you are definitely going to use, because that eliminates decision fatigue. You don't want to be standing there like, do I need the deodorant? No, you don't need the deodorant. Like I'm going to tell you right now, don't put it in transition. Definitely don't need it. Or it's like, it's a sprint try and you're going to have 8 different snacks. Like just put one snack. If you don't like your snack, it's fine. It's a sprint try. It's not a big deal. And try to keep that area as streamlined as possible. I think this goes for the most part for a lot of your bags as well.
Yep. Second point, here's some good news. You don't need a fancy bike. You just need to be aero, right? And it's really easy to fit a road bike with some aero bars. And I saw a lot of people who had road bikes and aero bars, and they looked really good. It looked fantastic. And so again, you don't need to go out and spend, $10,000, $20,000 on an aero bike. And even if you do want to spend on a TT bike, you can buy like an old P3 or something like Cirillo. There's a lot of good old bikes out there. But the point really here is that speed really comes from being aero, and it's just reducing the frontal drag. And that can really come in many ways, shapes, or forms. It can be an old tri bike, that can be a fancy bike, and it can be a road bike with aero bars.
Can I tell a quick story on this? My first TT bike ever was called, I believe, the Felt S32. I don't think they even make it anymore. I think it's like aluminum or something. It's not a nice bike. It was the entry-level felt bike. I think it was maybe like $1,000 at the most, which sounds like a lot of money, but not in the context of tri bikes. Like that's pretty cheap, but it was brand new. And I had some amazing races on that bike. Like we took that bike all over the place. I had really fast bike times at lots of different races. And then in 2021, I upgraded because I was like sort of having some back pain and I knew that this was not a fancy bike. I got this really nice sort of sexy Canyon that I still love. And honestly, I think the only speed gains that I got from switching bikes just came from bigger fitness. Like it was not so different in switching TT bikes that I really feel like I think the bike made a difference. I had aero wheels on both of them and they were both a good aero setup. So I don't know. I think that's just like a case in point is you don't need to spend an insane amount of money to get really, really fast. You just need to get the most aero setup possible. And a related story is that one of my athletes had a great bike. She definitely biked faster than she did when she did a race sim at Placid 4 weeks before. And I think the fitness was probably about the same. Like maybe there's the taper, this and that. But She really thought that the difference was just that she actually forced herself to get down and aero a lot more in that race context. And it's easy to want to sit up more and it's more comfortable sometimes to just ride sitting up. But she was like, yeah, I was just a lot more intentional about it. And she literally went like a mile and a half per hour faster on race day than she did in the race. And maybe more than that. I have to grab the exact stats just from being in aero more. So anytime you're on a flat, anytime you're on a slight uphill, I think we say like what, if you're going slower than maybe 15, 14 miles an hour, then probably you don't really need to be in aero anymore. And you definitely don't want to be in aero going up those super steep climbs. But for the most part, anything flat, you should definitely be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Super important. Get a professional bike fit. It was fun to stand there and I stand at the post office and watch people coming up the hill just past Mirror Lake Drive, and I get a really chance to see people for quite a bit of time. And I saw a lot of just very awkward fitting bikes. And again, it's expensive to do, but it's so worth it. If you're going to play the Ironman game, you want to be comfortable. Again, you want to be aero, and the best way to be aero and to be efficient is to get a professional bike fit.
I mean, I will say too, that felt S32, if that was fit perfectly, that would have been faster than getting on another bike that was way more expensive but didn't have the right fit. So just think about like that's actually probably a more price efficient way to get faster than just getting a nicer bike is to just actually buy the bike fit on a more entry level bike.
Another rant here is I saw a lot of people with just these full aero helmets. And when I say full aero helmets, these are helmets that have absolutely no venting whatsoever, right? And I'm really looking at like the Rudy Project TT helmets. I mean, they're just, I don't know, it's like putting a wool stocking on your head. So I think people got away with it this year because it was pretty cool out there. But what we really like to recommend is that you can either just use a road helmet, or they make these, road aero helmets that you see, probably you see a lot of folks at the Tour de France, they're a little bit more aero-like and a little more closed, but they still have a lot of venting. So yeah, I have many aero helmets without vents, and they're great for like things like 10-mile time trials, but they are terrible for even for a half Ironman that's warm, or an Ironman. I think the place I'd probably stop using them is after like I'd use them for a sprint, an Olympic. After that, I would use something that has some for a vent.
Fun fact, I've never actually worn an aero helmet before. People ask me questions about aero helmets all the time, and I'm like, I don't actually know. I've never really tried one, but I think it's funny because that's one of those things that people pounce on is like, oh my gosh, I can really enhance my performance. But are you first nailing the fitness, the fueling, the patience, the mindset? Like if you don't have those locked down, it doesn't matter if you have an aero helmet or not. That's like getting from that 99% to the 99.5% or whatever percentage it is. But I would not get caught up in like all these fancy items if you don't have everything else dialed. Once you dial everything else, you're a level 4 athlete, you're trying to go pro. Yeah, get a fancy vented aero helmet. But to that point, I don't think it's a huge thing that you need to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, on to the run. So as triathletes, we're always first scrunched over that bike, right? Just talk about like being an aero, right? And being an aero isn't always conducive to being sort of a smooth and rhythmic runner. You'll see a lot of triathletes, they run with their shoulders way up high and they're just very stiff. And again, because we're spending so much time on the bike, right? So it's very natural. So one thing to think about if you are interested in playing the long game, half Ironmans, is to sort of spend a little bit more time trying to become a little more fluid and rhythmic in your run form. And there's many ways you can do that. And I think what it's interesting to see is you'll see the pros coming through and again, very fluid, flowing, running. And you see some of the better age groupers for the same thing. And then as time goes on, you see people more stiff and slowing down, right? And they're sort of go hand in hand, right? At the end, you see people just like they're going really slow, they're shuffling, their shoulders are way up, they're super stiff. And you're like, oh, you need to relax a little bit.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different ways to do that. And I think that actually starts in the off season. So you can get like a professional run gait analysis. You can even spend some time on a treadmill with a mirror and just look at yourself or get someone to take a video of you. And you might be like, oh my gosh, I do not look like the pros. I look a little bit different. And then we've talked about too how if you can visualize, like if you're swimming, for example, pretend I'm Katie Ledecky, pretend I'm Katie Ledecky, like then you might swim a little bit smoother. And this goes for the runners too. Like pretend that you are one of those elite runners who you see and you see how they're moving and you're more likely to move that way as well. But I will add to this that regular mobility work, stuff like massage, stuff like working with a PT, with a chiro, all of that is really helpful as well. I've had a lot of kind of upper back tightness that I've been able to really work on. And I think that has actually helped my run form. So there's things to fold into probably your fitness and health routine that can be really helpful for just getting more smooth and rhythmic.
Yeah, absolutely. Something interesting is I think this year I saw more people changing into like sort of dry running clothes for the run. And I think that was probably a good move because it rained a lot and people were pretty wet and it's kind of icky to run maybe in the same tri suit. So anyway, just consider changing into dry clothes or at least having the option if it's going to rain that day. I think a lot this makes people pretty comfortable to like get to T2. It's kind of a treat to like get out of this gross, yucky stuff I'm in and get into something dry. And then maybe it's something that you usually run in. Like this is my favorite pair of shorts I like to run, and this is my favorite tank top to run in. So anyway, something to consider, especially for rainy Ironmans.
Yes, I said before that you don't want too many decisions, but I always do tell people put dry clothes into your run transition bag just in case, because you might also find that you didn't anticipate like chafing really badly on the bike. And now you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be out there for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. Like, I want to change into something. And you do get that bag back. So if you don't use it, it's not a big deal at all. But just knowing that there's something in there, I think is helpful. What I wouldn't do is put clothes in your special needs bag. Sometimes people say, like, oh, I'm going to put some clothes in there. I might want to change my socks. I have never, ever heard of an athlete actually doing that at the 13-mile mark. And you usually don't get that bag back. So I would say have everything in your run transition bag, but it is unlikely that you're going to then make any type of outfit change once you've committed and start the run.
Yep. Something we talk about a lot, a 12-minute to 13-minute miles are pretty common at Ironman Lake Placid, right? Probably, and for actually for a lot of Ironmans. So again, sort of thinking back, sort of reverse engineer this back and thinking about training, it's really funny because again, I don't have any athletes who are really training at 13-minute miles. And this is, or, if they're injured, yeah, maybe they do, right? But, you go out and you spend all the time at 9-minute, 10-minute miles, for example, right? Doing your quote Ironman training. And it comes to racing, and a lot of times a 12 to 13 is pretty quick, right? So anyway, it's just a very interesting comment to make. And I think some people get surprised at like, oh, I was so much slower on race day. Well, of course, it's a huge day.
Well, I think also this kind of leads into the next point, which is that even if you are running those 12 to 13-minute miles, you got to keep moving forward. And 12 to 13s moving forward is like not actually that bad. I think people really start to have a super long, super challenging day when they're doing 18-minute miles, 20-minute miles. They're stopped, standing still at an aid station in a porta potty for 8 minutes. That's when things start to get really, really bleak in terms of the Ironman run. But if you can just consistently tick off, like maybe you are running nines and then it's tens and then it's 12s. If it's 12s all the time, that's not actually losing that much time as compared to running 10s or 11s for all that time. Like maybe you're losing 10, 15, 20 minutes on your overall time. This is an Ironman. It's a long day. So think about just one foot in front of the other. Try to not walk except for through those aid stations if you can avoid it. And if you do have to walk a little bit, like say I'm going to walk for a minute and then I'm going to reset and then I'm going to try this again. But don't just commit to like, I'm walking the rest of this and I'm going to stop a bunch of times if you can avoid that.
Yeah, exactly what you said. The next point here is just, yeah, just keep moving forward, right? It's amazing what you can do if you just keep moving forward. And I think that was a mantra for a lot of my athletes. Like, it's okay. Maybe we're not quote running a marathon, but we are going to keep moving forward. And again, I think the cool weather really helped, but it's such interesting too. I think I saw people like even almost running faster in the second loop this year just because they kept moving forward. They had good fuel, they had good patience, they had cool weather. And it was amazing to see people like, I didn't expect to see this many people just in general moving that well in the second lap.
That's super impressive and very hard to do. But also this insight that we've talked about many times is don't assume that if there's a low point that it's like over, that that's going to be the lowest low point of the entire day. So if you have a rough time on the run or on the bike or at any point, you might actually rebound and be better later on. So don't let that mindset spill in of like, oh my gosh, it can only get worse.
Mhm. And my favorite thing about the run was that I get a chance to just so a couple of my athletes just stopped and we sort of chatted as they were out the recycling center, which is about a mile and a half out of town. And folks who weren't trying to like qualify for Kona, so they had some time to sort of stop and chat. And I just loved sort of looking into people's eyes and like everything is just sort of stripped away at that point, especially on the second lap. Like people look at you and you realize like, wow, you're looking at like at the soul, right? There's like truth, there's this connection here, right? Everything is sort of stripped away in that second loop and just have this conversation is just very deep and they were very brief, but I was like, wow, this is a very special moment. It was a very special moment for me. And I had some of my athletes later going to go, that was such a cool thing to stop and chat and to have sort of that really deep connection.
I'm recalling right now, I'm in like Placid, I believe in 2023, where I was like trying to run down some slot or something, and you were at the recycle center, and it was probably mile 22. And I think I like half cried saying like, can I slow down? And you looked into my eyes and said no. And I just kept running. So that was a very special moment of deep soul connection. But yes, it is a very vulnerable space. And I'm glad I didn't slow down. But yeah, just reminded me of that moment.
Exactly. Anyway, so Katie, you talked to some of your athletes afterwards and had some
Yes.
great insights.
I know. I was so sad to not be there. I am on my sort of late 20s wedding circuit right now. And so I was pulled in lots of different directions all over the country, but sadly, like on a plane getting these updates. But I had some great conversations with my athletes who absolutely crushed it and just wanted to share a handful of their insights, a little bit more kind of reflecting on just the race experience. So the first one is it actually has to do with carb loading, which we've talked about a little bit before. And I had one athlete who kind of regretted what she thought was maybe overdoing it on carb loading in the days leading up to the race by just making a lot of really radical changes to what she was eating. So she said, I think I did not eat nearly enough in an effort to carb load. So rather than, for example, having a bacon, egg, and cheese, I just had 2 plain bagels in town because I was trying to avoid protein and fat in favor of carbs. By the time I got home, I felt like crap, had a headache, was hot, and was worried I had come down with a fever and wouldn't be able to race. And we were actually chatting the day before of like, are you sick? Do you have a fever? Let's kind of think through this. So I think it's interesting because sometimes the carb loading can be really helpful. And of course, you don't want to be like lacking in carbs. But I also think that any radical changes to what you're doing, not just in fueling, but in your routine and anything, can kind of make race day a little bit tougher. So I think my approach to carb loading that I would suggest to folks is a little bit more conservative. But usually what I'll just do is like sip sports drink, which is really carb heavy throughout the day, because if otherwise I was just having electrolytes or plain water, I wouldn't be getting that carb content. But you could easily get down like 100, 150, 200 grams of carbs just from sports drink alone while still eating normal food. And then I'll also like choose more carb heavy snacks, things like pretzels or candy instead of protein or fatty snacks, but generally try to stick to that regular schedule of meals and snacks other than like not having a lot of fat and fiber. So an example of that is like I usually eat oatmeal with peanut butter for pre-race and pre-workout breakfast. But when I'm carb loading, I might go a little heavier on the oats and a little lighter on the peanut butter, but it's basically the same thing. So just no radical changes. The carbs are really, really important, but I don't want anyone feeling like this at the end of the day where they're like, oh my gosh, I'm shaky. I'm actually underfueled. I'm doubting my race performance. And luckily, this athlete rallied, had a good dinner, and was totally fine. But I think this is just something to be aware of when we're trying to make big changes and go all in on something like carb loading.
Absolutely, yeah. I've told this story before. I used to have this quote special race breakfast that I would do. I remember just sitting under a tree like in the dark before a race and just be like, I feel so terrible. And finally I just realized like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Like I have the same thing over and over. Like every day I used to have like a protein smoothie or something every morning and I felt great. And then a race morning I totally would change it up. I don't know why. I don't know what I was thinking. And eventually when I went back to like my normal breakfast, I was like, oh, okay, things are regulated now.
Definitely. Next one, another insight from an athlete. This is all about the idea of going sort of external versus internal on race days. So she talked about how in a race setting, she loves to really engage with the other racers because going fully external is a better place than fully internal, where your brain might be telling you a story that will not really help your performance, or it can be just kind of dark in there. I thought that was interesting because it is very dark for me in there, and yet I lived there the entire time of my races. So I want to try this external strategy. But you talked about how like making a friend, making other people smile or laugh is a great way to really harness that energy. And she mentioned how on the bike course it was torrential rain the whole time, and she just kept asking people like, damn, like, who do you think is ordering all this rain? And it would make people laugh every time. And then she would laugh. And then there would be this whole kind of exchange back and forth. And it's nice because this is something that's not really available to you in the same way on race sims. So you should use it as like a special trick that you can pull out. And then something else she did that I thought was really cute was she would ask other racers at the bottom of a hill, hey, who wants to run up this hill with me? And then she'd get a whole squad of people that was going to walk and instead decided to run up the hill. So all of this goes back to big values like joy and community. With this athlete in particular, we had started her season saying, this is about joy. This is about community. We're not going to lose that in the context of all of this. And she lived that out to a T on race day. So I think we need more people like this on the race course. It is a personal challenge for me to try to be one of those people and not like crying about my race pace or whatever. But yeah, just super, super awesome insight and definitely something for other people to try.
Yeah, I love this. Shout out to athlete. It's yeah, like I say, there needs to be more people like that out there. And it's funny, I saw some of my athletes come through the second loop and they had hooked on to other people and they were running faster because they got a buddy. And now they were both boom, were running. And I was like, oh, the power of just being with somebody else, right? And just making a buddy and saying, let's keep running, right? And it's very powerful.
And I think the funny thing is often that person, you think that they're super strong. They're probably hurting just as much as you. And it's just
Yeah.
the mutual understanding that both of you are hurting a little bit less that keeps you going together. I
Mhm.
spent 15 miles with a girl at Kona a couple years ago just because I think we both had that mindset of like, all right, well, I'm not going to break first. We're sort of chatting. And so we're going to make this happen. But yeah, make a friend. And both of my athletes made like really fun friends who were like, various middle-aged male businessmen who are doing Ironman Lake Placid, the standard demographic, and they had a great time with them. And I think that was awesome.
what's that saying? It's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with people, go together.
Oh, go together.
Yeah.
Wow,
Right.
this is getting
Yes.
snappy, but very sweet and very true. Okay, next insight is on importance of flexibility with fueling. So this is about in-race fueling. We've talked about it before. The fuel that you loved in training just may not settle on race day. And even something we're always like, if it doesn't work, try Coke. But even Coke may not settle on race day. One of my athletes said a lot of the Coke was just super carbonated and just been opened. It's supposed to be flat, but sometimes volunteers don't nail that. And so for her, it ended up being that oranges and pretzels were the thing that worked. And that's okay. It's not maybe perfect in terms of having to chew and having to grab it and all these different things, but it's something, and something is always better than nothing. So what not to do is to just stop fueling because you think nothing is going to work. You need to just keep trying until you find something that works. And that might be something that you've never, ever practiced with before. But I think having the open-mindedness to say, okay, I'm willing to try it. We're going to see what's going to happen is going to be helpful here. I think, we say try nothing new on race day, but for run nutrition, really anything goes and there are no rules once you've reached that point where you can't take in your gels anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I have an idea for next year, because we're always out at the recycling center. I think next year we're going to put a sign out there in a box, and the sign's going to say, "Tip your coach with Martin gels." And to see how many Martin gels we can get dropped in that box.
That's such a good idea. We're going to never have to buy Martin gels again. Yeah.
We could leave with like hundreds of dollars worth of Martin gels.
Well, this is funny, actually. One of my athletes, too, I believe this was in our pre-race call. She was asking me if it was okay. She's like, it's sometimes easier for me to just take half a gel, but I do it every aid station and instead of taking a full gel like every other. And I was like, yeah, that's fine because you paid like $800 to do this race. So I hope that you waste half of 26 Martin gels because it's okay and it's totally fine. So just know that like you can eat as much as you want on this course and you will still not break even. And I will say, sometimes I will stuff like 2 or 3 extra gels in my pocket with a couple miles to go because I'm like, at least I'm taking these home. At least I'm getting some souvenir from this experience. So don't carry too much extra weight, but you deserve a couple of extra gels because you're not going to want them at mile 22.
Absolutely, yeah.
Another insight, I've heard this from many athletes before, not in the context of this race, but one of my athletes' race, we were talking about this as well. A general PSA. Everyone hates their race photos. And it really sucks when you're like, I felt so strong. And then you see your photos and you're like, ooh, that is not what I was trying to see here. It's a bummer. But remind yourself that fitness is a feeling and that race photos, people, like they're out to get you. They're trying to get you at the worst possible moment. They're like, all right, let's find the down step. And there's like gel coming out of the mouth and like you might be throwing up. Let's take the photo right now. So just try not to judge yourself and remind yourself that fitness is a feeling thing is very real. And race videos are great too. I love looking at videos and then you can choose whatever still frame you want so that you can get all your kudos with a really good photo.
That's right. I always run into that when you accidentally flip around the camera on my phone and go, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to see that. That's me. No. Turn it back around. Turn it back around."
Exactly. Okay. And then last thing for me, just wanted to share some athlete mantras that I loved. One of them is the best bike is one I can run off of. Very true. Like, don't get caught up in how fast this bike needs to be. It might not be the numbers that you're looking for. It might not be the power, but it's a bike that you are preparing yourself to run a marathon after. So if you think about that, the entire bike related, my fastest day is one where I can run the whole marathon. We say this time and time again. You will have a slow day if you try to bank all your time in the swim or the bike. You need to spend the whole day prepping for running a marathon and making decisions on the swim and the bike that will set you up for that. And that was something I really underscored in pre-race calls with my athletes was you need to make decisions the whole day that will set you up to run the marathon and that your fastest day comes in the run. Because if you have a super blazing fast swim and an amazingly fast bike and then it takes you 7 hours because you're walking to run the marathon, that's a really slow day than going maybe 20 minutes slower than you could have on the bike and running the entire marathon. So just be strategic about where you're going to gain and lose time, but you want to run as much as you can. This one I already mentioned earlier today, but I am in no rush. I love that. It's just so casual. It's like, yeah, no, I'm in no rush. I am in no rush. If you feel rushed, you need to slow it down. And then this one I've heard many times before, but it doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be done when things get really hard. And when you are in the pain cave, you just have to tell people like, hey, this just needs to get done. And that is the pace that I'm at right now. The pace is that it's going to get done and it will. It's going to take a little while, but I do find that these days do go by a lot faster than you think. And that was something that surprised me with my athletes, or that I think surprised them. They were like, I was never bored and it went by really fast. Even though you're out there for the entire day, it goes by so much faster than some of these race sims.
I think what I'm always so impressed with our athletes is how much we learn from them after these things. You have these post-race calls. And you hear these things and you go, where did that wisdom come from? You guys are so smart. Like, I'm just amazing. Like, I want to take the credit, but it's like, actually, I think you guys are really smart. You're really thoughtful. And so just congratulations to everyone just for, yeah, keeping moving forward, for being patient, not being in a rush. Like, I really feel this year, like so many people just nailed it on our team. And I'm super proud of our team, our coaches and our athletes. I just really feel like this was the really good day.
Yeah, no, it totally was. Congratulations to everyone. And this is going to come out, I guess it'll be almost 2 weeks after Ironman Lake Placid. Be prepared that you might be kind of rocking out in the post-race blues right now. It's very real. It's likely to happen at some point. Hopefully you are not getting back into training too fast. But I've told my athletes, take at least 2 full weeks of just not a lot of hard movement, no hard movement, probably mostly just zone 1, swimming around a little bit. I wouldn't really be running. And then after that, listen to your body. Your body's going to tell you what it wants to do. If it wants to go for a big bike ride because it's not that hot out and it's a beautiful day, go for a big bike ride. If you want to not do swim, bike, run for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, like that's great. We all need an off season too. So you can go back in a full year and you can find our off season episode. We will link it in the show notes, but that is relevant for a lot of folks right now. And if you are not in the off season and you are still gearing up for races, we're here for it because we still need content. So I'm very, very excited about all that.
And no, you cannot sign up for another race within the 2 weeks. Just like
No, yeah, it's a
cool it
blackout
off.
period.
No, yeah, blackout period. You cannot sign up for any more Ironman race, whatever it is. I always like find like the couple days after like any one of these races, people are either like they're like, I'm either going to sell all my gear or they're super jazzed up, right? Like I'm going to sign up for this race and this race and this race. And generally, what happens is usually about the 4th day, people start to get pretty tired. And so I was just like, all right, there's a cooling off period of at least a week or two. Just like we're not going to do anything. We're not going to sign up for anything. We're not going to make any decisions about fall marathons, any of that stuff. We're just gonna like hang for a couple weeks.
Yes, and I think this is actually the best segue ever into my challenge of the week, which is post-race. Give yourself at least a week and probably longer if it's an Ironman of permission to be super lazy. Turn off the athlete brain, sleep in, just do all the things that you don't usually do because you probably have a job and you probably have other stuff that's going on that is going to be a demand on your time. Even if you're going on vacation, just rock out to being really, really, really lazy. And again, the more you lean into that, I think the sooner your body will actually tell you that it's ready to do stuff and the faster they will recover. We've definitely seen people make the mistake of trying to just get into things really, really fast. And that's a great recipe for injury. I think I've sometimes felt maybe forced into that by having other races like the Placid Daytona pipeline. Sometimes it's a little dicey with respect to recovery and injury risk and all of that. So if you can take that time, I would really try to take it for at least 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's great advice. My challenge of the week is a little more practical, and that is just like fairly soon after you finish the race, go clean your bike off. Like just like your bike just gets so gross with all kinds of stuff on it, bodily fluids and carb drinks and gels and all that stuff. But I actually had one athlete who got up next morning and cleaned his bike off. It's just like a nice idea. Like, don't go out and do any big rides, but just go out and clean it up, give it some love. It's like it got you through the whole race, right? And it's nice to have a clean bike sitting out there. So when you're ready after maybe a week or two of just being lazy and hanging out and relaxing, it's out there and it's clean and you're ready to go for a ride.
Yeah, I think we're reordering the challenges of the week. You can only be lazy after you've cleaned your bike. Like, can you clean your bike
there you go.
and then be super duper lazy? But you are not going to be happy if the sticky stuff stays on and the bike is in the garage for the next week. Like, you are going to have an infestation of insects and other things happening on that bike, and you'll never want to ride it again. So you already might not want to ride it again, but let's at least give yourself the best chance of wanting to ride the bike again by making it nice and clean.
And Kate, this brings up the fact. So are you a person who leaves their Ironman race number on their bike? How long is that acceptable to do in the rules, shall we say?
Mine usually sits on the bike on the trainer for the remainder of the season. I'm pretty sure my bike right now on the trainer has a sticker from my last try. So I think anything goes. And I'll usually cut the sticker and put it on really nicely so it's not flapping around because I hate the flapping. So as long as it looks sleek and arrow, I'm certainly going to flex that for as long as I possibly can.
All right, great. And obviously, if you're flying to and from a race, wear your medal at the airport, right?
And wear it to work for at least 5 days, for sure.
Exactly. those are the rules too. Yes, exactly.
Yep. Definitely. All right.
Your pick of the
week. Yes. I am going to recommend we have recommended this before, actually, the Solomon ADV Skin 12-liter pack. We've used this as an adventure rec, but I also think this is an amazing pack for spectating. I'm not sure if you used it in this context of this race, Jim, but if you're riding your bike around and you don't want to have to carry stuff and you want a jacket and you want snacks and you want water, you can put it all in the 12-liter pack. We also love this for adventuring, long distance, short distance, winter, summer. It's really the best pack out there. So highly recommend, even if all you're doing is just standing on the side of the road at recycle lane and cheering for people as they go by.
This is one of the best pieces of gear I think I own, mostly because it has such huge front pockets. And I don't understand why other companies don't rip off this concept. They have front pockets for just the hydro flask, but they don't have the front pocket for like all the food. Because when you're out in the mountains, what you really want to do is you want to keep moving all day long. You do not want to take your pack off. The goal is on most of these days is not to have to take your pack off. The stuff is in your back is usually stuff like, oh, it's my windbreaker, or like it's starting to rain really bad, or it's getting cold. Like, great, okay, I'll stop and I'll put in like hats and gloves, or wind pants, whatever it is, right? But all the stuff on a big day you want to have readily available to you in those front pockets. Reach in, whether it's your phone, it's your snacks, it's your hydro flask, all kinds of stuff in there. So anyway, best pack of all time. My gear pick of the week it's actually gear for spectators, which is bring a pair of binoculars to the race so that you can look way far ahead and see your person coming and get ready for shots. I took up this a couple years ago, and I love it. I can see people. If I sit the recycling, I can see people coming from like a quarter mile away in both directions.
This is the 55 plus gear pick of the week.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. Right. That's a great one. Very, very good. Awesome. All right. Well, this is fun. This wraps our Lake Placid content for a little while, at least, though. If more post-race insights filter in from our athletes, we will definitely share those. In the meantime, good luck to everyone racing coming up. We will have had Main 70.3 has come and gone by the time this is going to go. We've got people doing the PMC, really fun, big adventure days. Hopefully some mountain adventures coming up for a bunch of us. So yeah, have fun outside. Hopefully the heat breaks soon. And as always, thanks so much for listening. Drop us rating, review, etc. I should probably pre-record all the things that I say at the end. But yeah, if you have any feedback, please use our feedback form and check out our extended show notes.
Thanks, peeps.